So we were talking about the software development life cycle. So what are the phases we have in the software development life cycle? If you see, we have the project planning is the first phase we start with, and then we have the requirements gathering as the next phase, as well as analysis, and then the design, like what we are going to develop. So that particular design part we have, and then we will come to the coding part, coding and also the implementation we have, or we can call coding or implementation, we can call it as. And after that, we are going to have that particular software piece tested, and it is certified by the testing team as well as by the user for the users like the UAT. And then we are going to have the deployment. That particular code is deployed to the production instance. And after the deployment, we have the maintenance. So the software maintenance is going to be happening. So this is all what we have in case of the software development life cycle. So I believe we were able to capture that, okay, in the software development life cycle. And when it comes to the STLCs, so what is the STLC we have? STLC means it is a part of the SDLC. We can call it as the testing phase. This is called as a software testing life cycle. And in case of the software testing life cycle, what are the phases we have? We are again talking about 7 phases. In this case, we are going to have the requirement analysis. Once the requirements are analyzed, or once the requirements are defined, what requirements we are going to have. So those requirements, once the definition is done, we are going to have those analyzed within the testing team. So that is called as the requirement analysis. Then comes to the test planning. How we are going to test, what are the resources we have. So what kind of testing is required. All these all those things are going to be discussed part of the test planning. And then once we decide on what is the exact test we are going to have, we will be having the design. So what kind of like how many test cases we have, okay, how we are going to write it, and who is going to do what. So all that comes under the test design. A lot more are there. We are just taking a couple of things under the design part. And then we are going to have environment. Test environment means what is the hardware requirements you have? What is the software requirements you have? Do you need any additional software to be installed or any additional hardware to be procured? If so, what is the timeline you have? So all these we are going to consider, and we are going to set up into the test environment. Not only that one, like even the not only additional uh, software or hardware, even with the existing application also, when it comes to what are the roles we are going to have, like whether you have any approval process involved in the testing. In that particular case, whether you have the users properly set up or not, or the roles are properly set up or not. So all those considerations we are going to have under the test environment. Then comes, after setting all this, then comes the next stage called the test execution. We have analyzed, okay, the requirements. We had the planning made, and also we have the testing design is also developed. Okay, now that how we are going to perform all this. So we need to have this testing. We need to have the proper setup. So that particular steps which we are going to follow, those steps we are going to have under the test execution. So that is where we are going to have the test cases being written. Okay. And this probably after 2-3 days, we are going to start with the test cases, and we will be working on our site to start with all these requirements and the documentation part, whatever we are going to discuss parallelly. So we will be explaining first, and then you can start working on the site, working on these test cases also, probably a couple of days down the lane. Okay, like today is first, so we are assuming we can start working with those things from the 4th. Okay, so like 1, 2, 3, we just discuss the concepts, and then 4th onwards, you will be practically working on the site. okay, for the testing for these activities. Okay. That is a test cases we are going to write. And once we have the test cases, we are going to have the defect tracking. Okay, so defect tracking mechanism, like what are the defects we have, okay, issues, in other words, like anything is not perfect in the world. So whenever the software is designed or whenever the particular application is designed, it is obviously going to have some deficiencies or something issues we are going to have, or the defects. How we are going to have the define the issue or defect? So the simple definition which you can have is the gap between the requirement and the actual functionality, that you can call it as a defect. Okay, what is the requirement that is being agreed upon and what is currently working? Okay, so currently it is working. So that particular concept we can call it as a defect. So how we are going to capture the defects? Okay, so this particular requirement you have, but this particular requirement is not working, or it is supposed to work like this, but it is not working properly. That is called as a defect. Example, when you say some registration form which you're working on, and you have two sets of two sets of fields we are going to have. Okay, so in that particular case, how we are going to what you can say, like example, you have a form. Okay, so like you have a field 1 here, similarly field 2 here, like this. Okay, so you have fields like this, and example, finally you have something like a submit here. This is a form which you are working on, or it is a functional, like biodata form or something like, okay, so some profile page when you are going to work on. In that case, your functionality is that after filling in the field 1, you have to move the cursor to field 2. Okay, but when the development team develops, so from here, if they are moving here, instead of 1, they are directly moving to 3, they will be moving and they will be going back to 2, and then it is 4. But it is like your functionality is like you have to move from field 1 to field 2, and then to field 3, then to field 4. So instead of moving like this, if it goes as field 1 to field 3, then field 2, field 4. So this is a defect which you can call. Okay, so that particular defect you are going to uh, raise, or we are going to track it. Okay, so that is where we are going to have the defect functionality. And even let us say spelling mistakes also. Sometimes instead of field, okay, so I have another extra message here, okay, another extra E here in the text itself. So this particular type functionality doesn't affect, or there is no application problem with this, but still it is a defect. So something like this, which it depends. Okay, even on the industry to industry, medical, it may make a lot of difference there. Okay, so for a normal end user, okay, for a small customer service application, so it may not matter. So in that case, some scenarios, it may be called it as a you can call it as a user interface or UI defect, okay, or cosmetic error, okay, something like this, which you can call. So these are the things which are going to have under the defects. And then we are going to have the test reporting. Okay, so this test reporting means like how the test go. Okay, how many what is the scope of the testing, how many test cases you had, how many test cases were successfully executed, how many defects were raised, how many defects were resolved, if at all anything is done in the process. So all those we are going to have called as a test reporting. So this is all which we discussed so far. Okay, I was just trying to capture this, recap the things, okay, as we were not having the session on Friday. So just we want to capture this. Now we will talk about the new concept here. Okay, which we call it as the test strategy. Okay, what is mean by the test strategy? Okay, what are the components we are going to have? Okay, so today's topic we will take up test strategy. So tomorrow we'll wrap up the test plan, test scenario. Okay, and the next day we will be having test case and test execution, and from after that we will be having the test case scenarios and all these documents. Okay, we will be writing about those documents. So test case, sorry, test strategy. What is mean by the test strategy we have? Okay, so what are the components we are going to have in the case of the test strategy? So this is all the documents which we are going to have. Okay, I will make it available in the Google Drive. Okay, so by today night we will have this test strategy document also. Sample document will be covered. So it is something like a document we have. Okay, so what is the test strategy document? What are the components we are going to have in the test strategy document? Okay. We will be having something like a document where we are going to define the strategy for our application, okay, or our site, or like whatever we have, okay, like so application is a good term which we'll be using. Okay, so what are the components we are going to have in the tester strategy here? The first one, we are going to have the very first component called as, or the first part of it, we can call it, okay. It is called the scope and overview. This is a document we are going, this is the first step which we will be having. So what is the scope of this testing which you are going to do? Okay. And then what is the overview means it's overall application we are going to cover, or overall points which you are going to cover here. So what is mean by this? Okay, what exactly we will be having in the scope? Okay, we'll write in the scope and overview. Before that, we'll just write all the sections which you're going to have. And one more thing, every company will be having a document which they follow. Okay, they will, at times they'll try to come up with their own strategy document, but this is overall or generic view which we are going to have in case of the document. It is most of the companies will follow. It doesn't mean that this is a standard process, but most of the companies will try to follow this by adding whenever there is something required there. Okay, and then we are going to have testing methodology, how we are going to test this application. Okay, and then we will be having test environment. Test environment specifications we are going to have. And then we will be having the testing tools. Okay, what are the tools we are going to have in case of this testing that we will be using? And then we will be having the release control. Okay, we'll talk about what is mean by the release control here. Okay. Risk analysis. And we will be having this review and approvals. So these are the 7 sections which we will be having in case of the test strategy document. Now we will go over the steps. What are the steps? What is the meaning of each and every step here? The first step is called as the scope and overview. So in the scope and overview section, what is that we will be having here? Okay, so it is documents approval we have, as well as we will be having something like the review. Okay, and also we will be having the usage where this particular document can be used. Okay, so and also we will be having, it is like the testing activities which we will be performing. Okay, and then testing activities and phases. Okay, approval. So this is something like, if you just take any book, okay, in any book, initially you will be having couple of pages. Okay, some of the good books, you have a couple of pages initially, okay, about the book. So something like that which we are going to have in case of the scope and overview. So what is exactly this particular test strategy document is going to talk, and then it is where this particular document can be used. Okay, so that particular content we will be having, and the testing activities. Okay, so what are the testing activities you are going to perform? Okay, and then it is going to be the phases. Okay, what are the phases, or in which phases you are going to have the approvals? So some of the phases may or may not require approval. So those phases we are going to write in case of the testing activities and the phases needing approval. So these all will be written under the scope and overview. If you look at this, if you look at the test strategy document, most of the time, okay, in the overview concept, what we will be writing, it is much of the initial requirements which you have. Okay, like from the requirement analysis, we will be taking that, and based on that, we will be making this particular document. So that is a test strategy document which we are going to have. And coming to the test methodology. Okay, so in the case of the test methodology, okay, so what is the different types of levels of testing we are going to have, and then the procedures, team roles. Okay, all these we are going to write under the testing methodology. Like, we are going to have what are the levels of testing we will be having. Okay, like this particular testing, how many levels we need to have it. Levels means it is need not be like 1, 2, 3, like, so whether it needs to be done by let us say only the testing team is enough, or testing manager need to be involved, or any director level, something like that, which we are going to have even. Okay, so that particular concept we are going to have in the levels of testing. And then we will be having, okay, the next step as the team roles. Okay, who is actually going to be the test manager or test lead? Okay, so who is the tester we have? Okay, who is going to do the approvals? All this we are going to write in case of this testing methodology. Okay, and also the responsibilities also we will be writing here. In case of this document, we will be having the responsibilities of each and every role or each and every person here. Testing responsibilities also we will be writing. Okay, and as well as we will be writing something like called as a change management process for the changes. Okay, modifying the request, change management. There is a new word which we will be having here called as the change management. What is mean by change management? Change management means whenever there is a new change that is requested in the application, or in the process, when there is a new change that is requested, in that particular case, we are going to have what are the documentation we are going to have. Okay, and also like what are the how to do that particular change. Example, in our last scenario, or the scenario where we were talking about, we have the 4 fields. Now you plan to introduce 2 more fields there. In that case, that comes as the change management here. It is not a defect. Remember, you have the 4 fields. Those 4 fields, whether they are working properly or not, that is like if they are not working properly, that is a defect. Instead, when you are going to add 2 more new columns, that is called as the change management. So that case, so it is like initially they were not agreed upon. Now that the business is trying to add 2 more columns, so in that case, we are going to have the change management coming into picture. Okay, and the next one is going to be the test environment specifications. So what is the test environment specifications here? It is here we will be talking about. Okay, in this particular case, we will be talking about the specific data requirements. Okay, what kind of data we are going to have. Okay, so and also like as we were talking about the hardware, software specifications, so all that information we are going to have in case of the data test environment specifications. Okay, and how to prepare for the test, all those environments we will be having, including not only this one. Okay, so data requirement you have. Okay, software you can call. Okay, hardware we can have. Okay, so whether you have the required hardware or not. Like example, you are testing, we were talking about this particular feature long back. So when we are going to test something in a Walmart, okay, you are working for Walmart and you want to check the scanning. Okay, so you may need a gun. Okay, scanning gun is required there. Okay, so barcode reader is required. So those kind of things we are going to have, whether it is integrated properly into the system or not. You just have the barcode, you just scan with a handgun, and then now whether this particular barcode, okay, or the price is properly reflected in the shopper's cart or not. So that information we are going to have in case of the, we are going to verify all those. So that is called the test environment. Okay. So hardware we are going to have. And likewise, we are going to have, okay, so something like backup and restore also we need to think of in case of the environment. Backup and restore means whenever the application is built, okay, so now whether this particular code is properly backed up or not, including back also the database, whether you have the proper database or not. So all this comes under the software. So these all the environment specifications we will be talking about. And then comes to the testing tools, okay. So what are the tools we are going to use here, okay? So is it only manual testing we are going to have? And even in case of manual testing, so what kind of tools which you will be using, if at all, like you want to have the tracking, okay, so defects and all those. So where are you going to track it, or where are the requirements written, whether it is you're just going to Excel file, or whether you have something like a Jira you have, okay? So or ServiceNow you have. So all those things we will be using here. So testing, and also mainly the automation, if at all you're using any automation tools, so what kind of tools we will be using. And we did not talk about much about one kind of testing called as a load testing, okay. So application load testing is also required here, okay. What is mean by the load testing, that also we will be identifying. Sometimes like a load runner you use, okay. So way back you used to use the load runner as one of the tool for the testing. See, you are testing for a site, okay. You are testing a site, and that particular site, you know that it is going to be used by, let us say, 500 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people are going to use that, okay. Now when you are going to test that site, it is practically impossible to have 1,000 people sitting and then trying to test it out. What you will be using, you are going to use some simulators there, okay, like as if 1,000 people will load the site, the 1,000 people will try to use the site at the same time. So how it is going to work, whether it is going to break. So those kind of things we are going to use in case of the load testing. This is even required even for the corporate applications, okay. Example, there is a tool that is going to be rolled out in a company where you have 40,000 employees. Now, you cannot ask the users, okay, for the 40,000 employees, you cannot just ask them to use, okay, only 100 people at a time, like 40 batches or 400 batches. Now, what you need to do there, you need to make sure that even if these 40,000 people, okay, assuming they are in different geographical areas, okay, and let us say at least on an average, if the 20,000 people are going to use the application at the same time, the system should not fail, okay. That is where we are going to have the load testing, okay. So those are the tools, which tool we need to use, okay, what kind of tools we are going to use for this particular purpose. So these are the tools which you need to identify, and also which you need to use it, okay. So that is the load testing aspects which we have. And then comes to the release control, okay. Release control, it is like a, we can call it kind of release management. Again, it is pretty much the same thing. Usually, release control or release management is the process where we are going to see how many test cases we have and how many are properly executed. And then comes to the next step here. After this is done, after the testing is done, now we need to make sure how we are going to move the code, okay, we are going to give the approval to move the code, okay, from one instance to the other instance. What are the setups that are required? Okay. So that all this we are going to cover under in case of the release control. It is a release management process where we will be making sure, okay, to see that, okay, whether this particular code, usually here in this test strategy document, we are going to have the steps, okay, the steps to identify if this particular code can be moved, okay, like what level of acceptance is okay, whether you are okay to move, whether you are going to approve the code. Okay, when you have 80% of 80% of requirements are met, or 90% of requirements are met, or 0% tolerance you need to have. So those are the things which you are going to have in case of the release control. Okay. And the next one comes to be the risk analysis. Okay, risk analysis. What is mean by the risk here? If a particular application is not going to work, okay, so in that case, what is the possibility? Okay, what is the possibility of moving to the next level, or moving to the instance, or it is going live? Okay, example, most of the situations, right? Most of the risk analysis will be covered. Okay, during the test execution, we need to identify the risk analysis during the test execution. In that sense, example, you have 100 test cases that are planned, okay, to execute over 10 days, and with the 10 resources we have. Okay, we plan like this. Okay, so we have 10, we have 2 resources, sorry. Okay, we have 2 resources planned to execute. Okay, 10 test cases every day, 5 each. Okay, and then like that for 10 days we plan to do that. Okay, now how, let us say these are the 2 resources. When we say, right, 2 people are going to work. Okay, we are all human beings. Okay, we never know when people will be having some other task or some other work, right? So let us say someone falls sick, okay, or someone left the company. Now in that case, what is the risk the project is going to bear? Okay, that is where we are going to analyze. Now, is it possible for one resource to execute all the 10 resources all the 10 test cases every day? Okay, or let us say you plan like this, after 2 days one of the resources is not coming. So in that case, whether is it possible for the other resource, okay, to cover the 80 test cases in the 8 days? If not, what is the analysis, what is the strategy you are going to figure out? In that sense, are you going to identify some test cases that need to be executed or must go? Or is it okay to push the project, okay, by some other time? Or how many backup resources you have in case of one is not working? So those are all the risk analysis which you need to document, in the test strategy. Okay, any document, right? So they will always document all these things. What is the criteria? Okay, test strategy. Okay, and then based on all these things, they go for, most of the times, depending on the testing results and all those, they say go no go decision will be there, whether it is we need to go for the project or not. Okay, whether you need to go for moving to the next instance or not. So those are the aspects which you are going to have. All this will be required all these will be written in case of the test strategy document. Okay, and finally, review and approvals. Who are the people who need to review and approval here? Okay, so most of the time, who will be reviewing and approving this? We have the system administrators will be there. Because why system administrators are required here, we will be talking about different roles. Okay, so whether you need to have the application access or not, okay, whether you have the proper responsibilities that are assigned to the people or not, all these will be defined. Okay, and all these will be reviewed by the system administrator. Okay, they will be giving this. And the next one is, after the system administrator, you have the project management also will be required. Okay, why project management here? They are the people who is actually going to get the budget for us. Okay, they are going to get the business budget. Okay, so that particular team need to make sure that, okay, so all these people, all these approvals are there, or they are okay with whatever we are writing, how many team, how many members we are asking, and also how many, what is the software which we are asking for, hardware we are asking for, all these they need to make sure they will communicate to the business team, and then they will get the funding for these projects. Okay, so project management also they need to approve. Like you cannot write, okay, I need 10 computers and you just start it. Okay, someone has to fund it. Okay, funding has to happen for that. So that is a project management team that will be having, and then the development team. Okay, so whatever you are saying, okay, if you want to say 100 test cases, okay, in 10 days I need to complete. So the code has to be ready by then. Okay, you need to even give the timing as when it is going to start, when it is going to end. So the team has to approve or team has to agree upon. So that is the development team is involved here. And then finally, even we have all this, okay, finally budget has to be released. Someone has to fund it. Project management will get the funding, okay, but they have to get the funding from someone. Who will be the one? Okay, so here you will be having the business teams will be there. Okay, then not only for the funding, they even need to verify the system and make sure that they are the ultimate authority to identify, okay, and also to sign off, saying yes, we want this, we want these features, and it is working as expected. So this is all the document which we're going to have in case of the test strategy. Okay, or we can call it as the test strategy document. These are the major components which we are writing. Couple of additions may be there depending on the company to company, and also what kind of testing we are going to have. Okay, so all those information will be available. Okay, so